Hey, welcome back to the deep dive. You ever have that moment after church, maybe grabbing coffee, where the sermon just kind of sticks with you and you really want to chew on it a bit more?
Oh, definitely. Happens all the time.
Well, that's us right now. We just heard Pastor Florin at Agape Community Church. He's doing this series, The Roles of Jesus, and today was on Simeon's song from Luke chapter 2.
Yeah, powerful stuff.
The title was The Hope of Nations, right? But the big question he left us with was, how do we find, like, actual peace in this totally turbulent world we're living in? It felt a bit paradoxical.
It really did hope and peace when things feel so chaotic. It's a big question. And I think that's why we wanted to do this deep dive, right? To move past just hearing about Jesus.
Yeah.
To really get into what it means to, like, follow him. Maybe think of it less like sitting in a classroom and more like being an apprentice.
Oh, I like that. An apprentice.
Yeah, like a carpenter's apprentice learns by actually doing the work, getting sawdust on them. We're kind of exploring what it looks like to practically live out the way of Jesus day by day.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because, honestly, life throws so much at us, uncertainty, trying to keep up appearances, pressure from school, work, social media. It's overwhelming.
Totally.
So the big question for you, listening in, is what practical things can you actually do to find that genuine peace? How do you live out this apprenticeship? So that's what we're hoping to unpack.
Let's dive in.
So let's start where Pastor Florence started. That scene with Mary and Joseph bringing baby Jesus to the temple. He made a point that this wasn't just like a nice religious custom.
Right. It was a legal thing for them. In their culture, their world, faith, and law were completely tangled up, not like today where we often see them as separate.
Yeah, that's a key difference.
Absolutely. And you've got these specific rules from the law of Moses, like in Leviticus 12. For Mary, after having a son, she was considered ceremonially unclean for 7 days.
Okay.
Then Jesus is circumcised on day 8. But after that, Mary still had another 33 days of purification, so add it up.
That's 40 days, almost 6 weeks.
Exactly. 40 days before she could even go into the temple courts.
Wow. And then there was the other part too, right? The redemption ceremony.
Mm-hmm. For the firstborn son.
Yeah.
That comes from Exodus 13. The idea was every firstborn male was kind of set apart, consecrated to God.
As a reminder of the Exodus story.
Precisely. And the parents would symbolically buy back their son from the priest. It adds so much weight to why they were even there.
It really does.
And here's another layer, something kind of subtle in the text. Luke mentions their offering, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons.
Yeah. What's the significance there?
Well, if you look back at Leviticus 12, the standard offering after childbirth was actually a lamb, unless
you couldn't afford it.
Exactly. Verse 8 says if she can't afford a lamb, then she brings the 2 doves or pigeons. It's the offering of the poor.
So Jesus was born into poverty. That's powerful.
It really is. Born into a humble family facing real economic constraints. And then you add the political situation.
Right. Pastor Florin really emphasized the Roman occupation. Jerusalem wasn't free?
Not at all. And he mentioned the Antonia fortress, this huge Roman military base right next to the temple. Its towers literally overlooked the temple courts.
So Roman soldiers were watching everything.
Constantly. Imagine Simeon making his big pronouncements with armed guards potentially looking right down at him. It adds this layer of tension and maybe even danger.
Okay, so you've got religious rules, money worries, and foreign soldiers breathing down your neck. That's the world they lived in.
That's the pressure. And that context is so important because it mirrors the kinds of pressures you might feel. Maybe not Roman soldiers, but academic stress, financial anxiety, social expectations, the chaos in the news.
Yeah, it connects. The pressures look different, but they're still pressures.
Exactly. And seeing how people navigated that world can maybe help us figure out how to find peace in ours. It's about the response.
Which brings us to Simeon. What an amazing character. Luke describes him as righteous and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was on him.
Yeah, Simeon is this incredible model of peace, even in that high-pressure environment. Let's unpack those descriptions. Pastor Florin called his identity markers.
Okay.
Righteous meaning his life wasn't just religiously correct, it was aligned with God's harmony. His actions matched his beliefs. Devout, deeply loyal, committed to God.
Okay.
Then waiting for the consolation of Israel. This isn't passive, anxious waiting. It's hopeful expectation. He believed God would keep his promises, even with Rome in charge.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Hopeful expectation versus anxiety.
Huge. And finally, the Holy Spirit was on him. This points to a really intimate, ongoing connection with God, not just a one-time thing, but a constant presence guiding him.
And this wasn't just an internal feeling, right? Pastor Florin pointed out things Simeon did.
Yes, his life of peace had actions. Verses 26-28 give us three clear indicators. First, he received a revelation. He got a personal promise from God that he wouldn't die before seeing the Messiah, and he believed it. That shows incredible confidence in God's plan.
Even when nothing looked like it was changing.
Even then. Second, he was moved by the Holy Spirit. His actions, like going to the temple that specific day, weren't random. They were prompted by God. It's obedience in action.
Okay, revelation believed, then action obeyed. What's the third?
He praised God loudly, openly. He didn't whisper his thanks. He proclaimed it right there in the temple courts, Roman soldiers or not.
Wow. That takes courage.
It really does. And that's where the apprenticeship idea comes back for you listening. Peace isn't about escaping pressure. Simeon proves that. It's about aligning your life, your beliefs, your actions with God's promises and his promptings.
Even the small things.
Especially the small things. That's how you cultivate that deep inner peace, that resilience, even when life feels crazy. It's a practice.
So Simeon sees Jesus, and his response is this incredible song, verses 29-32. Can you remind us what he says?
Yeah, it's beautiful. He basically says, okay, God, you kept your promise. I've seen your salvation. You can let me go in peace now.
Dismiss your servant in peace.
Right. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles, and the glory of your people Israel.
There's so much packed in there.
Oh, absolutely. Pastor Florin highlighted a few things. First, God keeps his promises. Simeon saw it with his own eyes. God's plan of salvation is real, and it's happening.
And it's not just for Israel.
No, that's the second point, inclusion. Simeon explicitly mentions a light for revelation to the Gentiles, the non-Jewish nations. God's plan is bigger than just one group. He's inviting everyone in.
That's huge.
It is. And third, it touches on this universal craving. All people, all nations are looking for peace. Not just peace treaties, but deep peace. Peace between us and God. Reconciliation. It's a longing deep inside everyone.
But Simeon's message isn't all smooth sailing, is it?
Yeah.
He turns to Mary right after this beautiful song, and it gets intense.
Yeah, verses 33-35 are pretty sobering. It's like a reality check. First, he acknowledges God's plan can be puzzling. Luke says Mary and Joseph marveled. They didn't fully get it.
So faith doesn't mean having all the answers.
Not at all. It means trusting enough to take the next step, even without the full blueprint. Second, Simeon says his way prevails. Jesus will cause the falling and rising of many. He's going to shake things up, challenge the powers that be, reorder society's values.
That sounds disruptive.
It is. Third, you will face opposition. He says Jesus will be a sign that will be spoken against. Following Jesus means you'll likely face resistance, misunderstanding, maybe even hostility.
That's a hard truth.
It is. And finally, he talks about purity in thoughts and hearts. Jesus will reveal the thoughts of many hearts. No more hiding, no more pretending, no wearing masks. God sees everything, and following Jesus brings things into the light.
Okay, wow. So puzzling plans, societal upheaval, opposition, and radical honesty. That sounds challenging.
It is challenging, but that's exactly where the apprenticeship idea gets real. These aren't just predictions, they're the curriculum. Learning to follow Jesus means learning how to navigate these very things, the confusion, the opposition, the call to live without masks. It's practical, hands-on spiritual formation.
So how do we do that today?
Yeah.
How does this apply to, you listening, trying to figure out life, identity, faith, all that? Pastor Florin gave 3 specific actions, didn't he? Like practical homework for the apprentice.
Exactly. The first action is come before him with pure honesty. He called this finding the peace of N-O-W.
Pure honesty. What does that look like?
It's about dropping the act. We all do it, right? Project an image, hide the parts we don't like, maybe even ignore them ourselves. The practice here is to actually look at those areas where maybe your actions or just your inner thoughts don't line up with who you truly want to be or who God calls you to be.
That sounds vulnerable.
It is. It's admitting your real situation to Jesus. Maybe asking yourself, okay, what mask am I wearing right now? Why? Being brutally honest, first with yourself, then with God.
And the outcome of that honesty.
Pastor Florin called it a strange peace. The peace that comes when you stop pretending there's nothing left to hide from God. It's peace right now, in this moment. It's incredibly freeing.
Okay, honesty first. What's action number 2?
Trust his path. This leads to the peace of tomorrow. We all worry about the future, right? Especially when things feel so uncertain. Jobs, relationships, the world. Our minds can just spin.
Oh, yeah. The overacting mind, he called it.
Exactly. Fretting over stuff we can't control. So once you've found some peace in being honest now, the next step is to lean into trusting God for tomorrow, actively calming that anxiety.
How do you do that practically?
He suggested doing it in prayer, maybe silently at first, just resting, but then actually speak out words of trust. Even simple things like, okay, God, I know you love me. I know you care about the people I love. Help me trust you with today. Or even just help me trust you for this next hour.
Saying it out loud makes a difference.
It can, yeah. It's a deliberate choice to hand over the worry. And the result is another layer of that strange peace. It's the peace of tomorrow, knowing that Jesus holds your future. He's working towards ultimate reconciliation for everything. You can trust his overall plan, even when the immediate path is fuzzy.
Honesty now, trust for tomorrow. What's the third action?
Sing or respond. This brings the peace of worship. And like Pastor Florence said, this isn't about your singing voice.
Oh, good.
Remember Simeon. He's saying, despite being old, despite the Roman soldiers, despite his nation's suffering, this is about responding to God's prompting. It's an action.
So respond could mean lots of things.
Totally. It could be making a decision to follow Jesus more seriously, maybe getting baptized, maybe giving time or money differently, maybe praying for that person who drives you crazy.
Or just reading the Bible when you feel prompted.
Yes. Or reaching out to someone. Anything that's an act of obedience, a response to God's leading, springing from a thankful heart, that is worship.
And doing that brings peace.
A unique kind. The peace of worship. Pastor Florence said it's a peace that passes understanding. It goes beyond your circumstances. It grows into joy. It connects the now and the tomorrow through actively engaging with God.
Wow. Okay, so those three things, honesty, trust, response, are like the core practices of this apprenticeship of peace.
That's a great way to put it. The peace of now through honesty. The peace of tomorrow through trust. The peace of worship through response.
And it's not just theory. It's about actually doing these things day by day. That's how following Jesus changes how you experience life, right here, right now, learning to walk the way he walked.
Absolutely. It's practical. It's transformative. It's the journey of becoming his apprentice.
So thinking about all this, especially Simeon's point about masks and revealing hearts,
Yeah.
here's something for you to consider this week.
Yeah, what's one small concrete step of either honesty, taking off a mask, or response, obeying a prompting that you could make? Just one thing this week. You might unlock a kind of peace you didn't even realize you were looking for.